you might want to refresh the page. It might be there already.
Okay. Got it.
And Elisha.
Good. Hey everyone, this is Elisha Krause, and I'm here once again on the PragerU HQ. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Passover and a good Friday. The scribbles behind me are from Bring Your Daughter to Work Day. Yes, that's Monday, and Jared wasn't in town to erase it and tell you who our next guest is for the Facebook Live. So we thought we'd leave it there. She's a, virtuoso in her own right and an art master, obviously. 3.5-year-old Stevie, who's probably watching right now poolside with her daddy. Anyway, today I'm very excited to welcome one of our newest PragerU presenters and apparently a crush of the lovely Mrs. Prager, if you were listening to his interview with Dennis yesterday. He is a Fox News contributor, a regular Fox and Friends weekend host, an Army veteran, and author of In the Arena, which you can purchase on Amazon or bookstores everywhere. Pete Hegseth, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Loved your video this week, and congrats on reaching, you're at 1.5 million views already, which is just great.
Only you guys can do that. That's not me. That's Prager University. You guys have built an amazing platform. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. We're honored to have you. This week, and this is something that I know you've been talking about a lot on your Twitter feed, marked the anniversary of the VA scandal under the Obama administration. So first, could you, for our audience, summarize what the VA scandal was?
Well, the VA scandal was broken open by whistleblowers at the Phoenix VA when they exposed that there were secret wait lists that were being kept at the VA to hide the real wait times for vets. And unfortunately, veterans, while waiting on lists that were fraudulent, died waiting for care. And it was exposed by whistleblowers, and then eventually through the House Veterans Affairs Committee, investigations were conducted. And those of us who follow the VA closely realized quickly, this is not just Phoenix. This is a systemic problem. Wait times are much longer than the VA will ever admit. And it's a scandal, the fact that the bureaucracy covers it up. The bureaucracy hides and hides. It keeps information close to the vest so veterans don't know it and the public doesn't know it, because everyone wants vets to be served well. So the scandal exposed the depth of the corrosiveness of the culture at the VA. And unfortunately, under the Obama administration, there was such a belief in the single payer system that the VA works, that they just poured more money into that, hoping it would fix it. And of course, that hasn't solved the problem. It's never just $1 billion away from a fix or utopia. The culture is corrosive. Veterans don't have choice. There's no accountability. There's no transparency about real wait times. So the scandal continued. Now, thankfully, President Trump ran on a platform of fixing the VA and bringing a new culture there. So we're hopeful it can change. But 3 years on, vets are still waiting. And there's a lot of people not held accountable. There's things that can be done about it, but it certainly isn't fixed.
So it's still going on then?
Well, unfortunately, there was just a segment this morning on Fox and Friends when I was hosting about the Washington, D.C. VA hospital. It's 3 miles from the White House, yet the IG at the VA has uncovered terrible management, filthy storage, veterans waiting too long, mistreatment of veterans, where they had to relieve the director of that hospital and bring someone in from the outside, but they couldn't fire the director. They had to move him somewhere else because, it's almost impossible to fire anybody. Thankfully, though, this president and his new VA secretary, David Shulkin, have latched on to the things that need to happen, which is real accountability. There's a bill that could be passed, and choices. Just takes a long time to steer the ship, the Titanic that is the VA bureaucracy. So no, the scandal's not gone. The problems aren't gone. Veterans are still bearing the brunt of it. But I have hope that we can make some changes.
So I guess the average American's next question would be, okay, so what does the VA have to do with single payer healthcare then?
It is a single payer system. The VA right now has a monopoly on veterans care. The thing is, though, a lot of vets still seek a lot of their care outside the VA. They can go somewhere else, just the government won't pay for it. So they only do the things they have to do oftentimes at the VA, and then they go elsewhere. What do we do to take on a single payer system? Right now, a bureaucracy that isn't beholden to competition has a monopoly on the veteran. The veteran is a number, a widget that they sort of plug and play wherever they need to, as opposed to a customer that they have to serve uniquely and their unique needs. So you have to change that culture. There's 3 things I believe need to happen. 1, you have to have accountability. A leader of the VA has to be able to fire people who are underperforming or grossly negligent. David Shulkin wants that responsibility. The House has passed a bill called the Veterans Accountability First Act. Mm-hmm. The Senate is pending on it. If the president signed it, it would be a huge civil service overhaul that would give the secretary the ability to fire people. You've got great employees, but you've got a lot of bad ones. You have to get rid of the bad ones to change the cultural rot. Second one is choice. Let a veteran either, if they want to go to a VA facility, great. But if they can't be seen in a timely manner, let them go to a private provider. Let the veteran choose. Don't let the VA choose where they go or when they go based on how long they're waiting or a geographic standard. Basically say, hey, vet, you're in charge. You want to go to the VA, great. If not, here's a network of private providers that are approved or you want to go to. The dollars follow you. That way the VA is competing for that veteran's business. They're held accountable. They have to be nimble. They have to create a customer service platform that veterans want. Mm-hmm. That forces change inside of bureaucracy that never otherwise wants to change. And the third aspect is transparency. Right now, vets have no idea how long they're actually waiting. If you book an appointment, you call a 1-800 number and hope someone answers, and then hope they schedule you something in the next 30, 60 days. And even then, your appointment can be canceled on a whim. But, I buy things on Amazon, or you book hotels online, or whatever it is, and you see immediately that you're booked. You have an appointment, it's on your screen, it goes into your calendar, everyone's accountable, it's all clear. That doesn't happen for the VA. Thankfully, Secretary Shulkin just yesterday, or 2 days ago, released a new program where all the wait times of all the facilities are now public. So as a vet, you can go out there and look. Some of them are really bad, some of them are better. Mm-hmm. But the sunlight of transparency means that finally, not just the veteran who's making a choice about what facility they want to go to, but also the policymaker or the public or the media can scrutinize those numbers and then hold directors accountable. And if a vet says, wow, the VA says I only wait 12 days, but I've been waiting for 40. Mm-hmm. Now you can test that contrast as opposed to the VA having a monopoly on the information. And when you control the information, you can control the conversation. Well, so I like so far what the Trump folks have done.
Yeah, and what, as your video pointed out, there are some people, I think, even in places like Pennsylvania and Arizona, that were fudging the numbers of when vets were being seen, and controlling that information was enabling them to cover their tracks and not provide our veterans the care that they deserve.
That's right. So it's not trust but verify with the VA. It's not really trust and definitely verify, especially with wait list numbers, because it wasn't just manipulating it for manipulation's sake. It was so that they could receive bonuses based on metrics that were never tied to reality. So it's one of those things where if a veteran scheduled an appointment, then in the system they would not enter it into the system until it was 15 days before the appointment. So it looked like it was 15 days, but that appointment might sit in a drawer for 45 days before it's entered into the system. So the veteran waits 60 days, but the computer system says that they only waited 15. That's why the VA gets to report good numbers, but the veteran in reality is only waiting 60 days. We do know that in some places, while it's not as scandalous, there are ways to fudge the numbers to make it look better than it is. I do believe, though, Secretary Shulkin, the new VA secretary, is committed to changing that. It's just he's going to have to stay persistent, and he's going to have to get some help from Congress in order to change it.
So critics might argue, well, if we were to have a true single-payer system across the board, like in Canada, for all of America's systems, not just for the veterans, wouldn't it then positively affect the entire population and be better for everyone? So what would your response to that be?
I would say, what fantasy world are you living in? Because vets are, one of the most revered segments of our population. So policymakers and the public want them to be served well, even if they're not. And two, they're generally more healthy. I mean, these are guys and gals that were able to get into the military and capable of serving. Even if they come back with combat wounds or complications, they're proactive, vigorous type of people who want to be addressed. Mm-hmm. So there are 21.5 million veterans in America today. Only 7 to 8 million of them actually use the VA. And a VA has $160 to $180 billion budget with 150 hospitals and thousands of community-based clinics. And veterans only get about 30 to 40% of their care at the VA. A lot of it's outside the VA. It's not cost effective. Try to magnify that into 340 million Americans. With a hospital network that's more dispersed, a system that's more complicated, there's no way. It would be a hybrid system regardless. But the rationing, the wait times, the bureaucracy, the complications, the lack of customer service, all of the outdated nature of some of the things the VA does would be imposed on the general public, which is why one of the biggest things some of us have argued for is put the members of Congress on VA healthcare. Force them to use it.
See how they like it.
Then it would be fixed. See how they like it. They wouldn't like it, and they would want it to change. They'll never do that. But imagine if we imposed that same system on all of America. I think people would flee from a single payer system very quickly.
So you mentioned the new Secretary of the VA, David Shulkin, and
Yep.
and why do you think that he is the right person to lead the VA during this time?
Well, I think, first of all, a lot of us, he was an unknown entity because he had been with the Obama administration for a year and a half as the leader of the VHA, which is the Veterans Health Administration, led the hospital side of it. He's a doctor, an acclaimed physician who's very good at that. But there was no real understanding of how he would undergo reform or be aggressive in fighting a lot of the special interests in Washington that are so entrenched, whether it's the AFGE, the Government Employees Union, the VA bureaucracy, Democrats in Congress who are entrenched on single-payer health care. So far, I will say, you always got to give a guy like that the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. I even gave Bob McDonnell, the former CEO of Procter & Gamble under Obama, the benefit of the doubt. Let's see if this guy can change it as a businessman. The problem is Barack Obama was never a reformer. Donald Trump is a reformer. He wants to give vets choice. He wants people fired who won't do their job. He wants transparency. He wants an overhaul. So knowing that your leader and your president wants that, the question is, will Secretary Shulkin go after it the way that he's supposed to? So far, I have to say, he's done a very nice job. He's championing the bill for real accountability. In the past, the VA and the VA secretary have fought against that bill. Literally, the secretary fought against more power to fire employees because he was in bed with the unions. The AFGE controlled the VA secretary. Not with David Shulkin so far. He's fighting for that bill. The transparency piece, which I already talked about, veterans now can know how long they're waiting, is huge. And then they extended the current choice program for veterans choosing where to go, which is an imperfect program, but they only extended it through the remainder of 2017. Okay. And what I'm hearing now is Secretary Shulkin, along with other advisors, are going to introduce kind of Veterans Choice 2.0, which I believe will be a far more robust, far more veteran-centric choice program where truly no longer the VA gets to decide what you get and when you get it, but the money follows the veteran to make a decision on their own. That's the key choice. So far, it looks good, but because of President Trump's priorities on this, I think Secretary Shulkin is very much empowered. And so I dare Democrats on the Senate to vote against his accountability bill. So you're going to vote against a bill that gives the VA more accountability, that the VA wants and the president wants and veterans want and has passed the House already. Good luck with that. And vulnerable Democrats running for Senate probably will, for the wrong reasons, make the right decision. What doesn't really matter. All I care is that it passes the Senate so the president can sign it and Secretary Shulkin can be empowered to make those decisions.
Well, we've even seen in a couple other scenarios where a couple Democratic senators, probably for political reasons, have sided with Republicans this session. So that's been kind of interesting. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your opinions on some of the recent foreign policy decisions, though, of this White House, based on the fact of your expertise and you're a veteran and a commentator and an author on a lot of these issues. So on to foreign policy. How would you grade President Trump's foreign policy so far?
I have no reason to give it anything other than an A, because he has reasserted American leadership in the world stage. He's figuring out the combination between America first and American leadership. Certainly doesn't mean isolationism, nor does it mean interventionism everywhere. What it means is we're going to put America's priorities first, but we're also going to reassert leadership. And the reason you're seeing such difficult steps right now is because the world's been a mess for 8 years, and America has been in retreat. We've abandoned our allies. We've emboldened our enemies. We've apologized. We've appeased. And as a result, our enemies have been emboldened. Their client states have been emboldened. And when they reach out that elbow room and take more space, it means that when a real leader comes in like President Trump, we've got to elbow back to take back what we've lost. And some of that requires enforcing red lines, like in Syria that the Barack Obama administration refused to enforce, like we saw with the attack after the chemical weapons attack, or dropping the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan against ISIS when previously commanders were never allowed to do something like that, or in North Korea saying, hey, we're not going to have a policy of strategic patience anymore, and we reserve the right to take proactive military measures if necessary. If your enemies and adversaries do not believe that you have a credible use of military force, then your diplomacy is almost worthless. We saw that in Iran through the Iran deal. We certainly saw that in North Korea as they developed nuclear weapons. So this administration is reasserting the fact that America's word matters, the fact that American leadership matters. And so I give him an A, a bar none, maybe an A+ in addressing that, because now the next step will be what happens when we're challenged again, or what happens when what we hope will happen doesn't happen. How do we thread that needle, assert American leadership without having to add battalions and divisions of boots on the ground? But what I really love about this is this guy's committed to securing America and empowering the people that know best. Because you know what happened under Barack Obama? decisions about what happened on the battlefield were made by 30-year-old grad students in skinny ties in the White House who thought they knew better than everybody else. What I want the decision-making to be at is H.R. McMaster and General Kelly and General Mattis and our theater commanders. They're the ones that understand what it takes to defeat ISIS, and they've been handcuffed for a long time. So he's loosening the rules of engagement and empowering them. Doesn't mean we'll solve the strategic issues necessarily, but it means finally our warfighters will be unleashed to defeat an enemy that is certainly trying to do us harm.
I love that this bomb was actually called, obviously the abbreviation is Moab. It's what people have been hearing on the news and probably heard from you this morning on Fox News. But I love that it's called a mother of all bombs. And I just keep envisioning President Trump saying that, like in the Oval. We're going to drop the mother of all bombs, and it cracks me up. And internally.
Absolutely. And I would also love, no, you're exactly right. He's like, let's drop that mother of all bombs.
Yeah.
I also think the Pentagon has to deny the fact that this is tied to the killing of a Green Beret about a week ago in Afghanistan in that same region. And I understand why. They can't say that our policy is driven by vengeance or revenge. Got it. But there's no doubt that President Trump probably sat there and said, wait, we lost one of our best and brightest. He left a widow and 5 kids behind, fighting ISIS on the ground, when what we could do instead in that same region is drop the mother of all bombs on their face and kill hundreds of them, or however many are ultimately killed, without risking civilian casualties. Okay, I'll go with the bomb, because I'm not, and I don't know who authorized it, whether it's him or theater commanders, it doesn't matter. Either way, he's putting the interest of Americans and American lives first, which anybody who's put a uniform on could certainly applaud.
So final question for you, Pete, and thank you so much for your time this week. We really appreciate it. But former Ambassador John Bolton has said that he actually thinks that yesterday's Moab attack against ISIS was also a starch warning to North Korea. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do. It may not, per the commanders in Afghanistan who are using it for a tactical and operational advantage, they want to kill ISIS and they want to change the tide there. By the way, don't think that ISIS fighters are 10 feet tall and with nerves of steel. They're freaking out about this. They're freaking out about the weapons of war the Americans can bring. Do they want to go hang out in tunnels where they can now be Moabbed? This is a psychological warfare, and ISIS they're not Goliath, so let's remember that. But at the same time, sure, there are both the attack on the chemical weapons depot in Syria, as well as this Moab in Afghanistan sends a clear signal to Kim Jong-un insanity over in North Korea that you can bluster all you want, but you're not allowed to have nuclear weapons or the intercontinental ballistic missile capability that would deliver them to our shores. That's an existential threat. And we've seen in history what happens when we don't take dictators seriously, when we don't take them at their word. He says he wants to strike us with nuclear weapons. Sure, that's how they preserved their regime for decades. But at some level, you have to believe them, especially when they've got the technology to back it up. So proactive measures are going to have to be taken. No one wants to start a war with North Korea, but all of that also incentivizes China to take care of what they're currently have been allowing to happen in their backyard. They can cut off the gas, they can cut off the energy, they can cut off the banking, the food supplies. They can put even more pressure on that regime. So it's a symbol sent. Pyongyang has seen that and is calculating, but they're going to keep beating their chest because that's what's worked for them so far. I don't think that'll work under the Trump administration.
Pete, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Everyone should be sure to check out your newest video on PragerU.com. That's also posted here in the video section on Facebook Live. Thank you for your time. Have a happy Easter, and everyone should be sure to check you out all weekend long on Fox and Friends Weekend.
Well, thank you for that plug. I appreciate it. Happy Easter, and thanks for what you do at PragerU. It's awesome.